It was a cold October evening when I, David, received the email. The subject line read, "A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity." It was from a woman named Sarah Green, a paranormal investigator from New York. Sarah and her team had stumbled upon an abandoned manor deep in the woods of rural England. But this wasn't just any old house. Locals believed it was cursed. Legends told of people who entered the house and never returned, of strange lights flickering at night, and whispers in the wind calling out to anyone who dared approach. I had never been the kind of person to believe in ghosts or curses, but as a journalist, I was always chasing a good story, and this one had the potential to be the biggest scoop of my career. I was about to pack up when the phone rang. It was Sarah herself, and the urgency in her voice immediately caught my attention. "David," she said, "you have to come. Something strange is happening here, and I don't know how much longer we can stay. We need someone to document it before it's too late. Before I continue, I want to ask you something. What do you think? Do you believe in cursed places? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to tell me which country you're watching from." The next day, I found myself on a flight to England. As I watched the sun set over the horizon, a sense of unease began to grow within me. I brushed it off as jet lag or excitement. After all, who wouldn't be excited about documenting the supernatural? When I landed, Sarah's colleague Michael picked me up in an old beat-up truck. He was quiet, but I could see the worry etched into his face. "We don't have much time," he finally muttered as we drove deeper into the forest. "The house, it's alive, David. You'll see." His words sent a shiver down my spine. After a long drive through narrow winding roads, we finally arrived. The manor stood tall and imposing, its windows dark like hollow eyes staring back at us. The air felt thick with tension, as if the house itself was watching, waiting. The team was already inside, setting up their equipment. Sarah greeted me with a nod, her expression somber. "We've been hearing things," she said, motioning toward the darkened hallways. "Voices, screams. Sometimes we even see shadows moving, but when we chase them, there's nothing." We split into pairs. I was paired with Sarah's other colleague, John, a tech expert from Germany. We started in the living room, a grand space that looked frozen in time. The furniture was covered in dusty sheets, and cobwebs hung from the ceiling like delicate lace. Suddenly we heard it, a faint whisper, like someone speaking just out of earshot. John looked at me, eyes wide. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, my heart racing. The whisper grew louder, and it seemed to be calling my name. "David, David." My skin crawled, but I pushed forward, determined to uncover the source. As we moved towards the sound, a cold gust of wind swept through the room, slamming the door behind us. John and I were trapped. "Great," he muttered, fiddling with his flashlight. But the light flickered, and before we knew it, we were plunged into darkness. We fumbled through the room, searching for any source of light. The whispering stopped, replaced by the sound of footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps, coming toward us. The flashlight finally flickered back to life, and that's when we saw it, a shadowy figure standing at the far end of the room. It was tall, unnaturally so, and its eyes glowed faintly in the dark. We froze, too terrified to move. "What is that?" John whispered, his voice trembling. "I don't know," I replied, trying to sound braver than I felt. But deep down, I had a sinking feeling that whatever it wasn't human. The figure moved closer, its footsteps echoing through the empty house. Without thinking, I grabbed John's arm, pulling him towards the door. We managed to pry it open and rushed out into the hallway, slamming it shut behind us. We stood in the hallway panting, trying to make sense of what just happened. Sarah and Michael rushed over. "Did you see it?" I asked, my voice shaky. "See what?" Sarah replied, confused. Before I could answer, the walls around us creaked, and faint whispers began to fill the air again. But this time it wasn't just one voice, it was many, all speaking at once, their words garbled and overlapping. The house was alive. We gathered in the dining room where the team reviewed the footage. What we saw was chilling. Shadows darting across the walls, lights flickering on their own, and that figure standing there, watching us. "We need to leave," John said, his voice firm. "This isn't worth it." But Sarah refused. "We've come too far," she said. "We need to find out what's going on here. We can't just walk away." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to run, but the journalist in me wanted answers. "All right," I said finally, "but we need a plan." We decided to split up again, this time more cautiously. Sarah and Michael went upstairs to the master bedroom, while John and I explored the basement. As we descended the creaky stairs, the air grew colder, and a foul, rotting smell filled the space. "This doesn't feel right," John whispered, but I pressed on. At the bottom of the stairs, we found an old rusted door. It creaked open to reveal a small, hidden room. Inside, we found something horrifying. An old journal, its pages yellowed and brittle. The handwriting was erratic, frantic, as if the author had written it in a state of panic. The journal belonged to the original owner of the manor, a man named Edward Harrington. He wrote about strange occurrences in the house, about voices that whispered in the night, and shadows that moved of their own accord. But what stood out the most was his final entry. "The house. It's cursed. I can feel it consuming me. If you find this, please, leave before it's too late." Panic set in as John and I frantically tried to force the door open. Our breathing became shallow, and the oppressive feeling of the house seemed to tighten its grip on us. The walls groaned as if they were alive, and the whispers returned, louder, more urgent this time. John, sweating and pale, grabbed me by the shoulders. "David, we need to get out of here now. This house. It's feeding off us." I nodded, my heart pounding in my chest. We started to look around the basement for any other exits. That's when I saw it, a narrow tunnel hidden behind a pile of debris. It looked ancient, like it had been sealed off for centuries. Without thinking, we crawled through, desperate to escape whatever was chasing us. As we made our way through the tunnel, the temperature dropped even further, and the foul stench grew stronger. The walls of the tunnel were covered in strange symbols, symbols I had never seen before, but they filled me with an overwhelming sense of dread. The whispers followed us, echoing through the tight space, as if the house itself was chasing us. The tunnel finally opened into another room, one that didn't appear on any of the house's blueprints. It was a chamber, dimly lit by a single flickering candle in the center. Around the room were shelves filled with ancient books, bones scattered on the ground, and in the middle, a large, ominous altar. On the altar lay a photograph. It was old, black and white, and in it I recognized the faces of several people: Sarah, Michael, John, and me. My blood ran cold. How is this possible?" I stammered, picking up the photo. John stared at it, his face drained of color. "This can't be real. We've never been here before." Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to shake, and the walls of the chamber started closing in. The house wasn't just cursed, it was a trap, designed to lure in people like us and never let them leave. Just as we were about to flee, Sarah and Michael burst into the chamber, looking just as terrified as we were. "There's no way out," Sarah panted. "The doors won't open. We're trapped." Suddenly, the shadows in the room began to twist and contort, forming into a figure, the same shadowy figure we had seen before. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its voice, low and menacing, filled the room. "You've seen too much. You belong to the house now." We stood frozen as the figure stepped closer, its presence overwhelming. In that moment, I realized something horrifying. The house wasn't just cursed, it was alive, and it had been waiting for us all along. "We have to stop it," Michael yelled, grabbing one of the old books off the shelf. He frantically flipped through the pages, looking for a way to break the curse. There has to be something, some ritual, some way to end this. But before he could finish, the figure lunged at him, and in an instant, Michael was gone, swallowed by the darkness. The rest of us stood paralyzed with fear, knowing we were next. That's when John made the ultimate decision. "There's only one way to end this," he whispered, his voice steady. "We have to destroy the house." Without another word, he grabbed one of the candles from the altar and hurled it onto the bookshelves. The flames quickly spread, engulfing the room in a fiery blaze. "Run!" I shouted, pulling Sarah towards the tunnel. We crawled through the narrow passage as fast as we could, the fire chasing us, licking at our heels. Behind us, the fire raged, consuming everything in its path. The house groaned and creaked as if in agony, and the whispers turned into deafening screams. We raced up the stairs and out of the front door, collapsing on the ground just as the manor went up in flames. The fire roared, lighting up the night sky, and for a moment I thought it was all over. But as I watched the house burn, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, was still watching us. We stood there, panting, watching the cursed manor collapse in on itself. The flames continued to roar as if the house was fighting to stay alive, but soon all that remained was ash and rubble. Sarah and I turned to each other, exhausted but relieved. "It's over," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We're finally free." But deep down, I wasn't so sure. The next morning, as we prepared to leave the small town, I received a text. It was from an unknown number, and all it said was, "You'll be back." I stared at the message, my heart pounding in my chest. Was it a joke? A glitch? Or was it something more? As we drove away, I couldn't help but glance back at the smoldering remains of the manor. The fire had destroyed the house, but somehow I knew the curse wasn't over. The secrets of the abandoned house were still out there, waiting, watching, and sooner or later, they would come for me. So what do you think? Do you believe the curse is really over? Or do you think there's more to this story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, where are you watching from? Let's see how far this story has traveled.